Welcome to Beyond the Current Situation with me, your host, Lily Sanders. I have a very exciting guest. I know I say this all the time, but I'm one of the luckiest people in the world. I get the most amazing guests. And today we have Gloria Masters. And she is actually the woman behind the global hand signal for under 16s. She recently released one in 2023, which we're going to talk about, to resource and protect children from abuse. And she's also an author and founder of Handing the Shame Back Foundation, a charity which is dedicated to adult survivors of child abuse, rather. And her memoir, On Angel's Wings, My Flight from Trauma to Grace, it details 16 years of unparalleled child sex abuse, which is why she does what she does, why she does the work that she does. And she believes that all things are possible and that her purpose here today in life is to help others by shining light onto darkness through love and humanity. And so without further ado, I'd like to bring on and proudly introduce Gloria Masters. Thank you, Gloria, for being here.
You're so welcome. Lovely to meet you.
Thank
Lily.
you so much. Yeah, thank you. I want to start by really asking you to share some highlights of some very, very dark days, I'm well aware, in your childhood. Take us back, if you will, to I'm going to ask this I want to be very, very responsible in asking this. Take us back to the very first incident that you can remember when your body, as a child, as you knew it, was used inappropriately.
Yes. So look, I think the first recall I have is of around being 3 and having my father, who was my initial abuser, before he started trafficking me, it kind of trying to penetrate me, but he couldn't because it was too much for my little body. So
Tell us exactly, where were you? What was going on? Give us.
So I was in my bedroom and he had me pushed into the wardrobe behind the door so that if anyone came in, they wouldn't think anyone was in there.
Oh, goodness. And you were 3?
3.
Was he drinking alcohol?
No.
Mm-hmm. I'm so glad you're saying this. I'm asking you these things for a reason, because and I know, and every single person that I interview and speak to, there's a lot of myths out there. So just busting that myth right now. These things don't always happen in households where people are alcoholics and on drugs and have wooden teeth, right? So, okay. So dad has you cornered in a room. You're 3 years old. Now what?
Yes. Okay. So he tries to insert his penis into me. So he's trying to rape me, but it's too much. It's too much for me. So then he is using his fingers to try and stretch me so he can do that. But this abuse began from day dot. This is just one of thousands of incidents. The point being, I was born into this family. Child sex trafficking was well known. So I didn't just have my father involved in this. His mother trained me from the age of 5 to be a child sex worker. And they then started to make money out of me from that point on.
Oh, my goodness.
This was known to this family, and the training was unbelievable. the torture, the cruelty, the dehumanizing, actually, Lily. So I think for these people, I don't call my father a dad at all. To me, he was the monster. But for these people, this was business as usual. I wasn't really seen as a beautiful child. I was seen as an object that could help generate income for them.
Oh my
And so
goodness.
that was my job.
I want to pause you here for a moment.
Sure.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to share a photo that's on the screen. Of course, this podcast is in audio as well all over the world. But for those of you that are looking at the visual, I just put a visual up on the screen of you. How old were you in this picture? About 5, 3?
5 years old,
5 years old.
yeah.
Imagine people that are looking at this visual. Imagine this little girl for 2 years already had a father that was repeatedly trying to rape her and use and abuse her. Now, let me ask you a question. Let's now just kind of pause and rewind. You said that this was something well known, child trafficking in your family. You were groomed by your grandmother. Is that correct?
My grandmother, one of my aunties, and my father. So my grandmother and auntie were paid commission to train me in the art of seduction. The more I could do to please the pedophiles, the more money my father could make. And because of the way it was conducted and transpired, it felt as though this was known to them. How could they so easily have done that to me had it not been part of their psyche or their experience? That's my belief anyway.
Oh my goodness. And I'm sure that's truth. Now,
Yes, yes.
where was mom during this time?
Well, I think where neglect and abandonment live, abuse will always find a home. So my mother was what we would call a wounded narcissist. She was incredibly unavailable to me emotionally, physically, psychologically. She just was not interested in being a mother. So one of the things I would say about her was she was more often not there than there, and she never wanted to be there. So even if she was there, Lily, the door would close and you could not have access to her. So, in conditions like that, of course, anything can
Oh
happen,
my
and anything
goodness.
does and did. I'm very grateful I made it through. I didn't think I would.
Absolutely. My
Um,
heart is just like I can't even wrap my mind around just
yeah,
a few sentences, a few incidents that and we've only just begun to tip the iceberg of what this really looked like for you. So
yes,
here you
yes, it
are,
is.
and you're literally born into a life of that's it. This is your fate. You're being trafficked, whether you like it or not. And this is it. And you don't even have the love and adoration and nurturing of a mother, which is
Well,
the literally the rise and fall of a family unit.
I agree with you. It's a really good point that you raise. You see, without the protection or love or care of my mother, my sense of self was nowhere to be seen. I was just so lost and so broken and so out of control when I was away from my father,
Yeah.
because it was just, I was so young. It was very, you can see the sadness in my eyes in that image, Lily.
Yeah, I just put up an image, a visual
Yeah.
of this little girl, Gloria. You
Mm.
look like you're about 5 years old here, maybe
Yeah, probably 5.5.
5.5.
Yeah.
This is when I look at this image, I know what I see. What do you see when you look at this image?
I just see the lights gone out in that little
Yes.
face.
Oh my goodness. You you look like, yeah, the light's gone out. Almost uh pathetically confused. And also I see you reaching in there. I see you reaching somewhere, like there's this like spirit in there that um is looking to for something better, brighter. And so I want to ask you, um, were you aware that what was happening to you was not normal and in fact was something that was very abnormal in a bad way?
No, and the reason for that is because from the time I was born, this was happening. I was being sexually, physically, emotionally abused from the time I was born. So when you grow up with this, it becomes normal. Now, it doesn't mean I didn't have trauma responses or that I didn't feel anything. It just means I was surprised if I went to other children's houses that their dads didn't want to attack me.
Oh my goodness. Who were the pedophiles that your auntie and your grandmother and your father put you with? Where did they come from?
Well, initially it was my father, his friends, and extended family. So they would be paying money to come and have sex parties or have those events occur at someone's home. But as time progressed, my father was part of the Freemasons, and that was quite a significant group for him. And so I would be trafficked there at least once a month. And then the big money would be made out of my, back in those days, Lily, you might be too young, but it was called a front parlour. So my grandmother's front parlour. So
Mhm.
from the age of 6, I would be taken to her home and men would be brought in through there.
Wow.
And she would be paid money, and my father would collect the money off her later, but I saw him give her money
But
because that was her commission.
wow.
Now,
She
if
was almost like
any,
the madam for you.
oh, yeah,
Awful. Were
yeah.
there, speaking of which, and I want to continue with what you were going to say, but were there other children, or was it just you that experienced the abuse in this
This,
situation?
yeah, so for me, it was just me during those times. But as the years went by, other children were brought in, and there were many venues and many different types of activity around it. So, child sexual abuse materials, including videos. And I feature in over 100 videos. Many photos were taken, and these, of course, were all on sold. So this was a very lucrative market.
Oh my goodness. And let's stress that to our audience. This was a very lucrative market. And by the way, still is even more lucrative. Tell tell our audience where this all happened. Where were you born? Where did you reside? Like where in the country was this going on?
So I'm in New Zealand, born and raised in New Zealand, and this was out in West Auckland. And so,
So New Zealand, the land of all of the little lambs and the sheep and all the pretty meadows that you see in Hollywood, this is going on.
well, let's be real about this, Lily, because it is just a representation of any other country in the world. We
Totally.
lead the world in infanticide, we lead the world in suicide, and we lead the world in child sexual abuse. So no, it's not just the pretty picture. It's a beautiful country, but there's quite a big underbelly here.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to stress.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
there are a lot of uh Americans that are listening to this right now, falling back, or their mouth is wide open, like, wow. You know, we come from, when we think about New Zealand, well, me anyway. I mean, I think of things like from the Heidi movie, like
Yes.
with the hills and the meadows and, right?
Yes. I get what you're saying. I think it's
It's crazy to really hear. And by the way, I'm so sorry for what
yeah,
you experienced. And I wish that we can erase all that so you can go back and not have that kind of life. I truly do.
thank you.
Because one of the things I'm going to ask you, and I usually ask these kind of questions later on, but I've got to tell you, in my view, and I, time does not heal. We find different tools that help us, that we can apply, that help us navigate through life without going out of our minds. But there's this is not something that you just erase from your past, right?
I think, yeah, see, I slightly have a slightly different view. This happened decades ago.
Mm-hmm.
Since the time I was in my early 30s, I started the healing and recovery process. So
Mm-hmm.
I've had decades of healing, lots and lots of modalities, and I'm so grateful, not for the experience, Lily, but for the fact that I would not be who I am today, and I would not be able to give back with such a depth of awareness and compassion
Mm-hmm.
for others had I not overcome this.
Yeah.
So I think, you see, what you and I have discussed already, yes, that's some of it, but there's way more. This
There's
is
way
just,
more, and I'm so glad you brought that up as well, because the essence of my show, Beyond the Current Situation, it's really about, I have guests on that have these adverse, you know, um,
yeah.
uh, uh, experiences, but they've truly gone beyond that situation. For one, everyone has their own way that they've done it, and their own why, and their own missions and their own purpose, like today. So, but before we get
But
there,
can I just ask you, sorry,
absolutely.
I just clarify, when I said there's way more, what I mean is we've only just touched the surface of what I've experienced in those 16 years. It's
Ah,
only, it's only a small amount. There's way more than that.
yes, there's way more in
Yeah.
life.
In there, in those 16 years. This
Oh,
is
in those
just,
16 years.
yes,
So,
yes. This
could
is,
you unpack what you mean by that?
well, we've looked at child sex trafficking. We've looked at the amount of money that was made. We've also touched on some of the child sexual abuse materials that were made. But what is not really understood is how that all happened and where that was done from, and then how, what happened as I became a little older. So, trigger warning, we're talking about suicide attempts, we're talking about my father and brother trying to kill me. We're
Right, right.
talking
Okay,
about
so that's where I
satanic
want to pause you.
ritual abuse. We've got many, many things we haven't even touched on,
Oh
Lily.
yeah, no, that I understand. I get
Mm,
that. So
mm.
don't worry about that. I'm gonna get through all that. I thought you
Oh,
were talking about
yeah.
something. Yeah, we're only here a couple of minutes now. I'm gonna get to all of that. So
Mm.
let's rewind. Now we're back to where you're still a child. And
Yes.
so I'm gonna put up, I'm sharing a photo of, for those of you that are looking at the visual, sharing a photo here of Gloria. She's so tiny and young that her head barely goes beyond the door, the handle of this truck or car. And Gloria tells me that this is a vehicle that she was literally trafficked in. Can you talk about that?
Sure. So that was my father's work van. And what he would do, I would be either roughly woken out of a deep sleep and thrown into the back of the van and then taken somewhere to be abused, leased, sold, rented
Oh my gosh.
at night, late at night. Or this would be somewhere where I would be taken out into the country where Freemasons would have events. And so it was a very, very long drive out there, but also a big long driveway up to wherever this particular property was. And
Mhm.
it was there that lots of other children would be, and it was there that we would be drugged. And so we're talking barbiturates. So,
Wow. Wow.
oh yeah,
Now,
yeah.
this wasn't the parlor. This is where the Freemasons, where they would meet, or a place where they would take you, girl.
Well, sometimes events would be held there. So
Okay.
this was one venue, but it would be held over a weekend.
Goodness.
So for the children among us, we would walk in and a nurse would be there who would check us out, and then a doctor would inject us. So
Mm.
we were drugged because if you can appreciate, and I know it's horrendous to even imagine, but we were traumatized, frightened children. We didn't know how to cope with what was going to happen, and they knew that. So no one wanted to pay money for a scared, frightened child,
So
if you
they
think
drugged
of
you.
it. So they drugged us. And to be honest, to this day, I'm so grateful for the drugs, because the
Oh my
searing
goodness.
reality, yeah.
I get that.
And I can't touch, as an adult, I couldn't actually touch drugs because I was drugged so much as a child. It scared me. It scared me.
I understand.
The
So,
hallucinations that would occur were pretty horrendous. And Lily, I'm so grateful I made it through, because not many people make it through 16 years of that. Put it that way. It's
right.
pretty rare.
Did you, I was going to ask you, did, um, did any children die as a result of that in your, in your presence?
Through satanic ritual abuse, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Sometimes I would hear after an event that someone wasn't going to be able to come back because they had died.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm pretty sure that some of the drugs that were given were too much for young children.
Yeah.
And when I talk about young children, I'm talking as young, probably the youngest would have been 4, up into teenage years. And yeah, these people knew exactly what they were doing.
Oh my
And
goodness.
there's a myth, there's many myths out there, that maybe this only happens among lower socioeconomic groups or cultures. No, this goes everywhere.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is one of the huge myths that I'm always busting. It goes on everywhere, which is why we really, bystanders that are even listening to this, don't think that something like this is not possibly happening somewhere in, your own backyard, like in your neighborhood, or maybe that particular house that you're always scratching your head, what's going on there, or something's weird or whatever. But this is not something that is prejudice. It goes to any demographic, any gender, any socio status, any economic status. It is prevalent. What's interesting to me, Gloria, is you claim that New Zealand is the leading in trafficking, child trafficking. Is that true?
No, I don't know who's
Oh,
leading the world in
oh,
child
okay. I thought that's what
trafficking.
you
I'm
said
saying
before.
child sexual abuse.
Okay.
Well, no other country is saying that they have 1 in 3 girls by the time they turn 16 will be sexually abused, will have been. So
No
no
other
other
country
country is
saying that?
claiming that. So yeah, I'm saying if we're saying that, we're leading the world in child sexual abuse. In terms of child sex trafficking, it's the biggest money earner. It's now overtaken the drug trade,
Of course.
according to the UN. So child sex trafficking is $34 billion a year industry.
Absolutely. And we're not even talking about organ trafficking, which is something that I'm very deeply dived into. That's a whole nother podcast. So this is literally the epitome of dehumanizing a child, what you went through, what
Yes.
all of these children went through. Did you feel dirty?
I did. I would imagine so, but it wasn't my prevalent thought. I was deep in survival mode. I just did what I had to survive, because it almost sounds interesting, and it's a good question, Lily. Thank you. I didn't have the luxury of feeling anything much, apart from I had to keep breathing. I had to survive. I had to survive, because the child sex trafficking was bad enough, but there was so much torture as well that went on in terms of me. Once I got left in my father's home for 18 months, the psychological torture that happened was worse than any child sexual abuse I ever experienced. So out of the 3, out of the emotional, physical and sexual abuse, the emotional abuse was torturous for me.
When you said when you were left in the home with your dad for 18 months?
My mother and father separated when I was 11 years old.
Okay. Thank you for explaining. Okay.
Yeah.
And so now it's just you and your father, and now mom's out
and
of
my
the
brother
picture.
in the
And
house. And
was your
so
brother
he was,
trafficked as well, abused as well?
no, but he became my father's mini-me. So he went on to abuse me horrendously as well, and brought his friends in.
Oh my God.
So it was just this non-stop torture. And, you know, one of the worst things that ever happened, and happened repeatedly in those 18 months, was my father would be home from work, my brother would be there, and they would be evil as they were and strip me naked. I was 11 years old. I was pubescent. I was ashamed of my body. You know what young girls are like as they're hitting puberty. And I was so undernourished because I was starved, and they wanted me starved because the pedophiles paid more the smaller you were. And so I was almost every rib was so visible, it was terrible. But they would strip me naked, put a leash and a collar around my neck, and make me communicate like a dog. So I wasn't allowed to use words. I was only allowed to howl, whine, pant, bark, growl. And and it, to the point where, Lily, I wasn't allowed to eat food unless I ate it like a dog, and it was on the floor.
Oh my
wasn't even in
God.
a bowl. So they took great pleasure in, you talk about dehumanizing.
Oh my God.
That was absolutely frightening and terrorizing. And I just, I had to endure it, and I just had to keep breathing. Then they would rape me and attack me, and as they did. But the worst thing was being dragged around the house like that and being told I was a dog and that I would only ever have puppies, and, if I was ever to have, because of course I got pregnant many times.
Oh my God.
So that's a whole other area. But they would then take me outside and tie me up on the back deck naked. And the way the house was configured back in those days, we had big quarter-acre sections, and the back deck was fully enclosed with just an area that you could, see out of. So I was tied up there. Yeah.
And no one else could see that.
No one else could see, but equally,
Ugh.
I didn't trust anyone because I was so traumatized. I didn't have the words, and that's why the giving children tools to use is so big in me, because I realize if I'd had a hand sign to use, I may have been saved. And so look, that was one of the worst experiences for me over those 18 months, was that continual being tied up and
Oh
treated
my
like a dog.
gosh. Oh my God. And where was that
At
pathetic
my father's
grandmother of
home.
yours?
Where was the grandmother?
Your grandmother during that time, the one that groomed you.
Oh, well, she was either at her house or she'd come over. They didn't care. Girls and women were second class. We were nothing, really.
And yet she underscored
No,
that
she was
by
she was
track by
nasty to me,
yeah.
Lily.
Yeah. I can I tell you, I'm going to put up a visual of your grandmother.
Ugh.
I can see her nasty in that.
Can you?
I
Yeah.
can see her nasty. I could see the evil. And gosh, what a beautiful girl you were. I mean,
Yeah, but look at the sexualized posing. I was 11 years old. Look at
yeah.
how I'm made to stand and pose.
Yeah. Who
You
do you
see?
remember who you were posing for? Who took this picture?
My father.
Oh, Jesus. Oh my
Yeah.
God. And look at how bony you are.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I
Oh my
was so
gosh.
underweight. Underweight.
Um,
Um,
I'm surprised, even in speaking about this, you literally give him the surname of father.
well, non-father, monster, but yeah, I could never call him dad. That he never deserved that.
No, but
And
he basically he was biologically responsible for bringing you on this earth, but he is the furthest from a father to ever. He doesn't even deserve to be called a father. Your brother
no,
doesn't deserve to be called a brother. Um, I hate to fast forward, and I want to come back to this
go
moment,
for
but
it.
where are these monsters now?
My father has passed. My brother's still alive. There was I did take it to the police when I was in my 30s, and they didn't have the burden of proof because it was my word against theirs. And because of what I've described to you, can you imagine 30 years ago describing that?
No, I can't.
They just couldn't police couldn't get their heads around it. They can today, because satanic ritual abuse and Freemasons surface everywhere with this type of abuse. I'm sure
God
they do in
Almighty.
America too. You
Oh
will have
yeah.
many
Let me
stories.
tell you something. I think it's 2 years ago, maybe even less than 2 years ago, Gloria, there was a case here in the United States, in America. And this couple, mother and father, which don't even deserve the word, that name either. This couple who gave birth to these children, I believe there were one, two, I think there were three of them, four of them, maybe. Maybe four. They lived basically like animals in cages for years. They were never out of the house. One day, on a day where I don't, it's 2 years ago. I'm trying to think. It was such a horrific story. One of the girls like escaped to try and get help. And thank God for this Good Samaritan. The girl didn't even know, she didn't even know how to socialize, to ask, to even explain literally what was going on. But she was trying to help like her brother that was going to be in the most dire situation. They were literally caged. And when I hear your story, it makes me so angry and sad.
Yeah.
And it makes me, as much as I hate to say it, but the sentence that comes out is sometimes I hate some people. Like there's no, you can't soften this in any way, nor is it even easy to really understand it. So given that whole story that you just told me, you said you couldn't really trust anyone. Well, of course not. Did you ever hear of like a situation where someone like finds a dog and the dog is and by the way, I'm not trying to be disrespectful with the analogy because they treated you like a dog, but basically you had you had that feeling like a stray dog that was literally abused over and over and over and over again, that when someone goes to try and help the dog will bite, right? And like the worst, no one ever gives that stray the time of day or the benefit of the doubt. And so here you are all these years behind us where of course nobody listened to anything about abuse. Was there a time where you felt like you didn't want to survive, where you didn't want to just be in survival mode and just wanted to die?
Yes, and many times during those 18 months, I actually tried to take my own life 3 times during those 18 months, but I just couldn't get it right, Lily.
How did you try?
The first one was my father's belt around the wardrobe rail, and I just couldn't get it tight enough around my neck, and then the rail wasn't high enough. It was just clearly I'm meant to be here, but it was just a horrible, part of me had died and I just couldn't see a way out.
I was just going to say, did
There wasn't a
you
way
find
out.
that you had no way out?
Well, you see, I went to my mother every second weekend, but that was harder because she didn't really care about me at all anyway.
Yeah, what the hell was that going to do for you? She sounds
Well,
like, that's pathetic too.
because she wasn't abusive, the worst thing she ignored me. I would cling to her and cry and beg and hide under the house even so that she couldn't take me back.
Oh my gosh.
It was just a nightmare for me, but I was nothing to my parents,
Yeah.
either parent. And, if you think about a pen that you could pick up and write with now,
Mm-hmm.
that's what I was to my parents, just an object. If they wanted something, they'd pick it up. If they
Mm-hmm.
didn't, they didn't. But it became, it was almost cruel. And then after the 18 months were over, and that's a whole other story, should I tell you that? story, what happened when I got out of that house
Please.
after 18 months?
Please. And how old were
So
you after the 18 months, and how did you
12
get
and a half, 12 and a half.
Okay. How did you get out?
I walked home from school one day and I could hear laughing down the hallway, and it was a woman, and I could hear my father's voice, and they were in bed, in my father's bed, naked. And I got such a fright because Lily, I'd been trained to be the sex slave, the Cinderella really, and the object of torture. But I was also expected to be my father's mistress. So all of this, as well as sleep with him every night. So as I walked down the hallway, I could hear this laughing, and I just went into shock, and I turned and I ran to my mother's house, which was about 5 kilometers away.
Okay.
And I turned up, and for the first time in my life, I was crying, I was heaving, I was just shaking. She said, "What's wrong? What's happened?" I said, "He's in bed with another woman. He's in bed with another woman." And so she called the local priest, and guess what he said? "Get her out of that house. It's not seemly for a child to be living in a house with an adulterer."
Oh, thank God. Even though that was not even like an iota of what was going on, that was your way out.
No, I had thought, and you can be forgiven for thinking that.
Yeah.
So I've never felt so relieved and so excited until a day or two later, I said to my mother, "I'm sorry, but I'm so excited. I'm away. I don't have to ever see him again." She said, "No, you're going back. You're going to see him every second weekend and half of every school holiday." And to be honest, that broke me. From the age of 12 and a half to 16, the child that left my father's house on a Friday night every 12 days, every 14 days, was never the same child that returned. It was actually more traumatic for me and more torturous for me, believe it or not, having 12 safe days.
How?
Because, man, were those 2 days did I have to make up for not being there.
Oh my gosh. Oh.
So I was beaten. I was often off school because I was beaten so badly. I couldn't go to school with the bruises.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Did anyone
Miracle.
did you have like a friend? I know with this kind of situation.
Yes, I did. I did have one
able
friend.
to say anything like in all of the I'm assuming the shame, the embarrassment, the fact that nobody would ever believe you, and I'm thinking is the voice in your head. Did you tell anyone?
A friend, when I was living with my father for those 18 months, I had one friend and I was so excited. But unfortunately, it's all in the memoir, but unfortunately that took a whole twist, because when she would come to my house or started to come to my house, my father started grooming her. And I had a choice, you see. If I stayed friends with her, she would keep coming and he would eventually rape her as well. Or I could not have her in my life, so I had to let her go. And that was just
That's
horrible.
So and then what about after? Did you tell anyone during the time of 12 and a half?
I used to get in people's cars that would turn up at my father's house. I would get in their cars and hide in their boots so that I would be taken out of that environment. I tried to tell my mother so many times, but it was just talk to the hand or that I've got a good imagination. So I stopped trying to tell. And equally, for survivors that might be watching or listening, we're threatened, you see, that equally if we do tell, someone will be killed that we love. So it might be a family pet or the other parent or... So I was traumatized, I was frightened, and to me, children don't necessarily use words, they show us through behaviour, Lily.
Yes.
And so at school I was out of control. out of control.
I was going to ask you, what did teachers, what do you feel was there, they were aware of when they looked at you?
They hated me because I was always the naughty one. I was always screaming out for attention. I was always being strapped. Back in those days, the nuns would strap you. I was always being sent out of the class. I was out of control.
How were your grades?
Now, when I spoke to a teacher I had at 11, I went and saw her years ago and spoke to her, and I said, what do you think now? She said, without a shadow of a doubt, you're being horrendously abused. We weren't taught any of this. We didn't know any of this. And I believe she was a good person. No one was deliberately ignoring, but the culture back then was a man's home is his castle, mind your own business.
Yeah, exactly. And did your mom not for one iota of a second ever consider having you checked at a doctor? Never?
You see,
never check your female private parts for abuse and rape?
No,
and
because
disease?
So this is what happened. The Freemasons I mentioned to you are all very high up in political, legal, medical, criminal justice systems, as they are in your country as well. And so these Freemasons, there was a doctor, and so the doctor was one of my clients as a child. So he would often come to my grandmother's house and do things.
Oh my God.
But what I'm trying to say, Lily, is I nearly died because when I would get pregnant, my grandmother would try and perform the abortions on me. And they didn't always go well. And one, I nearly died. And I'll never forget seeing that doctor's face. So they had to call him out to help because I was losing too much blood. And look, I know you'll have a severe trigger warning on this show. You won't speak to many people like me, I don't think. But I managed to get through, and I was very unwell for a long time after that. It took me weeks to recover. But my father came and saw me the next day at my grandmother's, and I heard him as he was leaving the room say to her, get her up on her feet as soon as possible. We need her back working.
Oh my goodness.
Well, he didn't give a shit.
No, of course not.
Sorry,
because he's a monster. No, please. It's an adult audience anyway.
Yeah, okay.
So not only was there scarring as a child emotionally, but then you had the double jeopardy of scars in your female anatomy, for God's sake.
And even to the point, Lily, when I, as an adult, had my first child, you see, I blocked a lot of this out of my mind.
As I'm happy you did.
I am too. But of course, when I was pregnant with my first child, I obviously went to the doctor, and his words to me were, gosh, I can see you've had, that this is not your first child.
Yeah. Oh my God. You were probably like full of scarring.
I was.
So let me ask you about that for a moment.
Yeah.
So fast forward, did you go into a loving relationship, get married, and have a baby?
Yes. Except it wasn't a loving relationship.
Okay. So
because I was attracting people to me who I was familiar with. So psychotic, evil, nasty, deranged, psychopath, horrible, narcissist.
So you married a monster.
I did it twice.
Like your father.
I did it twice.
Oh, that's okay.
I'm a slow learner, Lily.
I did too. Sometimes it takes 3 failed relationships to have an awakening. There you go.
Hey, I'm just, I'm very grateful for my beautiful children. And
course.
the kindest thing I can say about my husbands are that there was no way I could have attracted healthy men to me. I was still too damaged.
Right. So today, and we're still
Today.
going to go back, but right now,
Yeah.
since we're on this subject,
Yeah,
do you love yourself today?
I do. I'm so proud of me.
I'm proud of you too. You should be proud of you.
I'm so grateful I've come out with love and
Mm,
humility, and
mhm,
a light to shine, and I'm very blessed. I'm very
mhm.
grateful.
As
Yeah.
you should be. And do
Yes.
you now understand today what relationship health is, what a healthy relationship looks like?
100%.
Wonderful. Are you in
100%.
are you in a relationship today?
Not currently,
Okay. That's
but I think I have a feeling that's coming. I
okay.
think I believe that there are no coincidences and timing is everything. And I just knew I had to do some big stuff in the world and devote lots of time and energy to that, which I have.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think that there's going to be a time, and I'm grateful, and I love men, and I equally I trust men now, and
Good.
I my template was always to please and to be as sexually provocative as I could. So if you can appreciate, my conditioning had been very well done.
Mhm.
It took me years into my adult life before I could recognize just how damaging and false that was. Not
Yeah.
just for me, but for good men, because good
Yes.
men would look at me and think, why are you behaving like this?
Mhm. Mhm.
So look, the this type of trauma, for the length of time, Lily, that I endured it, does not just dissipate because the age of 16 I could escape. It reached far into my life, and
Mhm.
it took me years and years of heartache and actually just hard work
Yes,
to
of course.
try and remove the false person I had become,
Mhm.
and look in the mirror and meet the real me for the first time. So
Mm. Beautifully said. And so take us back to, so now you're 16. How did you escape then? After the back and forth every 14 days with the
yeah.
monster, how did you get out of it altogether?
Well, it was interesting because between the ages of 11 and 16, there's just a bit of context here. I would be taken to our red light district in Auckland, and I was leased out of the top floor of a nightclub. I would be chained to a bed. Men and women would come in and pay for my services. And it was downstairs in that club on the weekends that the filming would take place. Yeah. So
Wow.
what would happen in that place, I can now, but it took me decades to ever be able to walk down that street in Auckland
Of
without
course.
feeling physically
Ill.
frightened and ill. But the reality was that when I was there, it became clear to me that I was never going to escape this. And it was one of the people there that worked there as well who said to me, because I was not allowed to be visible, you see, down in the main area because this was illegal. This was child sex trafficking.
Mhm.
This was every movie that was made, every picture that was taken, every assault that occurred or abuse that occurred is actually a crime scene, just to be really clear.
Wow.
These are crime scenes, exploitation of a minor. Anyway, but one of the workers there said to me, you've got to get out of this. This is, we all hate your father.
Who said this to you?
One of the sex workers employed at the club, she said, we all hate your father. We hate seeing you here.
Mm.
They would try and sneak me food. They were kind to me. you
Oh,
see.
thank God. You had some angels.
Yes, but and she said, you've got to get out of this because you're going to get used to this. And how can you get away from your father? And I remembered something. My parents had an agreement. The day I turned 16, I could choose where I wanted to be and what parent I could be with, and I never had to see again. So I chose. I never saw my father again. The day I turned 16 that saved my life, because Lily, I don't know if I could have continued on
And she
much.
supported that. When you moved back in now with mom and you're residing with your mother, she couldn't force you and she didn't try
Well,
and
yeah, but this
coerce
is
you.
what 100%. But this is what an evil witch she was. She was trying to push me to go back
Oh dear
and stay
God.
with my father and see him. And I said, no, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. And he would ring and he would turn up and he would try and see me. And I wouldn't do it. But she kept trying to push me. So
No.
there you go.
You stuck to your guns.
Well, I don't know how I found it in me to stand up to that terrifying person, but I did.
And so now fast forward, you had
Yeah,
how many children did you have?
two.
Two. You had two children. How old are they now?
35 and 33.
Okay.
Yes.
When you were first, when they were younger, toddlers, 3 years old, around the time when you first recall being abused,
Hmm.
um, were you still with the father of those children?
I was when my daughter was born, not when my son was born.
Okay.
Yeah. So the first one. But that's when the memories started coming back.
That was my question. So my
Yes.
question is, yeah, I figured
Yes.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not my first rodeo. So I'm thinking, what showed up for you when you looked at them? What triggered you? What kind of things when they were at that age as a mom now?
Yeah, I just remember feeling incredibly protective and incredibly frightened. And I started having nightmares and I
Yeah.
started seeing things coming at me. And I realized that my daughter was the age I was when the abuse,
Yeah.
the first rape occurred. And so that's when I went into started therapy and realized what had happened.
And realize that you had a long journey ahead of you to actually face it, uh heal from it, and start to really love yourself.
Well, it took years, Lily.
I'm sure
I had
decades.
16 years of this, and
Hmm.
so it took years for all the memories to emerge.
Yeah, to emerge, right. um
Yeah.
how old were you at that time when your kids were 3 and 5 or whatever,
Oh, so
or
I
baby
was
and 3?
32.
32.
Mm.
Okay. So that's around about 15 or so years
16
after,
years after
16 years
this.
after you'd gotten out.
Yeah.
And still yet a baby, because you realized you didn't have a life growing up, right? You realized that you had grief of actually a childhood, right?
I didn't have a childhood.
That's what I'm saying. So
I'm the
you
child now.
actually, yeah,
I'm
that's
the
what I
child now.
mean. So
Yes.
so at 32, you were still you were standing at 32 with children, babies in front of you, and yet you never had a childhood.
No.
What goes through your mind when you think about that now?
Just how I never stood a chance, really. And what a miracle it is that I'm sane and that I'm alive. You see, we're many, many things that happen, but I guess, people say to me now, my kids actually say to me now, Mom, when are you going to grow up? And I go, never, because I'm making up for it now.
Yeah, you could be
But
like, you're like, I want you to be Peter Pan.
yeah, I am. I'm the one that people go, really? And I go, yeah. Because to me, life is such a gift.
It is.
Life's such a gift. I'm very
It
grateful,
can be,
Lily.
unless you have asshole parents.
Yeah, well, it is now. It is.
Pardon my bad
Yeah.
language, but it can be.
Yeah.
And so, what would you
I think
say?
I don't know what you think of this. I'd be interested in what you think of what I'm going to say now. Although, of course, I wish it hadn't happened, I'm so grateful that I've learned what I have, because now I can celebrate life and I can love who I am and I can embrace the joy around me. And I also think, because of what I've experienced, I'm able to hold the light for those other beautiful men and women and others across the world who have experienced this.
Mm-hmm. But
So
uh,
that's my purpose in life, is
mm-hmm,
to help others by shining this light.
mm-hmm.
And because I'm healed, it's a gift to me. Yeah.
Thank you. What
Yeah.
what would you say were the biggest factors or modalities in or methods or whatever in your healing?
I found talking,
Okay, talk therapy.
yeah, great, because I found that sometimes I would make sense of things as the words would come, and then I'd think, oh, where did that come from? And the therapist could then reflect, and something would click into place. So I found that great. I
Okay.
found writing, as in journaling, great.
Mm-hmm.
I found writing my first book amazing, because even then I made sense of things I hadn't.
Oh
I'd
yeah,
always put
that
my
happened to me
mother
when
on
I
a
wrote.
pedestal. Yeah. And
You always
then
put your mother on a pedestal.
I've been trained to, because she was the narcissist, you see.
Mm-hmm.
So
And
it took me a long time to realize she's just an evil
that
woman who would
she
sell
was
her only
damaged.
child. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. One of my earlier podcasts, Gloria, when I first started this show, I had on a rabbi who is now a dear friend of mine, Rabbi Yossi. And he is like, he's a guru when it comes to the spirit world, believe it or not, a rabbi. And what I learned from him is that when we have a choice, we're allowed to decide when we're in spirit before we incarnate into this world, that we are offered the opportunity, and then we decide again in spirit. We decide if we're going to come into this world. And if we decide to do so, um, he said it's a very painful experience to incarnate into going from spirit into the flesh, right? Into the mother's womb. And I asked him, well, then why would we incarnate into like a family that we're going to be have all this adversity, like for instance what you went through, right? Like, and he said, well, just because we decide to do it and we might pick that human, we don't foresee in spirit of what we're going into. which I found to be very interesting. Because from the human standpoint, a man and a woman, they decide that they want to have a child. Biologically, they have a child. They make that decision to bring a child into the world. And then they make that decision, to belittle that gift and abuse, right? And dehumanize that poor child, right? But when we're in spirit form and we come in, we're like, it makes me wonder, like, why did I choose that family? Why did I choose that mother? Why did I choose that father? And so after I had that conversation with him, I was like a little bit during the time of the conversation, actually, I got a little like somewhat angry. I'm like, well, I would never choose like that kind of lifestyle, or like, it was like, well, you didn't know. And then all of a sudden my guards came down and I was like, oh, I said, okay, because now that's the beginning of my healing of self-blame. Because when I was reading all of these other quote unquote spiritual books that say you choose your mother and father, you choose, it was really messing up my my path to healing. And he opened up the gateway, basically flooded me with, no, you didn't know. You only knew the person you were coming, whose womb, but you didn't know what you were getting into. And I thank the day that he was on my podcast to tell me that. Does that help you at all?
I'd kind of had that belief anyway. I'd
Uh-huh.
felt, yeah. So, for me, it's something I'd chosen. I'd offered to come down to earth, experience that so that I could help humanity.
Oh, that's different.
Yeah.
Because that's the opposite of what I was saying. That was the opposite
Mm.
of what helped me. I wasn't
Right.
sexually abused, but I was
No.
physically and emotionally and
Yes.
mentally abused. But um, that's interesting. So you believe that you chose this family and that path so that you can help other people. Is that what you believe?
Yes.
Interesting. Huh. Very interesting. I'm shocked to hear that answer. And
Well,
here,
I just know it to be true. It
mm,
makes
I
sense to me.
I respect it. I
Absolutely.
respect that
Yeah.
answer. And so
Yeah.
now, what kind of family imprints from your monster parents and monster brother and monster grandmother and monster auntie, how were you able to let go of those or erase those family imprints so that it didn't pass on to your children?
Yeah. Great question, Lily. It took some doing because we parent the way that we were unless we consciously choose not to. And in order to consciously choose not to, we have to first have awareness. So, for instance, I wouldn't naturally play with my children. It was not something I naturally knew how to do. And I think understanding that was a key for me because I loved my children deeply and I valued them, but it was also a job I felt tasked with. So those imprints took a little while for me to make sense of. And I think until I became a parent, I couldn't have foreseen that or been aware of that.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember, believe it or not, being 11 years old and deciding I would never be a mother like I was mothered.
Mm-hmm. And some
Never,
people would,
never did.
in your position, that have lived, had experienced things like you, have also said, I will never be a mother. I will never be a father, because just the mere thought of it is just all too much.
I always had a love of children, though. I
Mm,
was born with a love of children, and
how
I always
nice.
had quite a protective little nature. So
Mm-hmm.
I'd always noticed children, and I was a teacher at one stage in my life as well.
Wow.
So I
As
always saw the beauty in children. I love children. Mm.
What age did you teach?
So the age of the children, they were 11 and 12.
Ah, how ironic. As
I know.
Yeah, I know. As as a teacher of that age group, 11 and 12, given your life as it were at that age, how did that help you recognize any kind of signs or disguises, even in other children, your students, that perhaps were living in abuse?
Yes, and that's a really good question, because there were several children that were showing signs to me, and of course I picked up on it just like that. And the thing being that I think for me, I've been so highly attuned to be aware of everybody else around me. I could tell you who was behind, who was in front, how many were out to the side, what that noise was that was coming down the drive. I could sense all around me, because I had to be highly attuned, extremely hypervigilant, to keep myself safe as I could. Yeah. So taking that into a teaching experience meant that I saw things that maybe other teachers wouldn't, but it certainly was there for me. Yeah, I
Mm.
could pick it very easily. Mm.
Uh, Again, that's kind of a piece of your life that um, was really could have been a godsend for some of those students that
I think
needed
so.
a way out.
And look, I loved them. And my gift, you've got to see the shimmer in this, Lily. I didn't actually think I was that good of a teacher. Like, we had 13 curriculum areas, and look, I was a bit crap at some of them and okay at others. But my superpower was I always saw something of value in each child.
Oh, that is a superpower.
And so I loved it. And I loved their faces lighting up, and I loved showing them who they were. And every day in my classes, I would choose two people before they came into the classroom, and I'd write a little note, because I was always observing, because remember, I've been trained to observe.
Mm-hmm.
And I made up this little thing, and I had them on my desk, and I had 38 kids I was teaching one year, and I would just notice the good. So let's say this day before, John had opened the door and let Matthew in, because Matthew was carrying so many things,
Mm-hmm.
and he stood back and let Matthew in. So my little note in his desk the next day as he got to school would be, "Thank you so much for being so thoughtful. I noticed you did that." And of
Mm.
course, I knew which notes I'd written into which kids. And so I'd look up as they came in, and I'd look at their face, they'd open their desk and they'd go, and I thought, that's all. Kids just want to be valued, don't they? They want to feel they're worth something.
Of course. And don't
Yeah.
don't you feel that came out of a lifetime of being not undervalued, but being out and out dehumanized and not valued and not having any sense of significance at all?
Isn't that interesting? But see how that lights me up? I loved that I could do that. Where did it come from, Lily? It came from all that pain. Was it conscious in me? No, it was deeply embedded in my psyche.
Yes.
The beauty of children, the value of children,
Mm-hmm.
just the amazing light of children. And so
Mm-hmm.
something big in me, you see,
Mm-hmm.
had to
That should be
be.
your next book.
Yes.
Just thinking, just saying.
The beauty. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The value in children, the light in children. I um I love that. I love that, Gloria. Um,
Thank you.
take me to now your work today. You recently released a hand signal for 16-year-olds and under. Can you do, do you have that hand signal? Is that literally out there, certified out there in the world yet? Or is that something that you're just looking to circulate?
I'm looking to circulate it, and I
Do you
have
have a
been.
picture of it? Again, this isn't going to be just visual, but for those that are going to look at this podcast on YouTube where it is visual, I'd love for you to put up that
Sure.
signal. And what I'll have to do is I have to make you a host or a co-host in order to share. Would you understand how to share the screen?
Sure. Sure.
Okay.
You
So,
just
oh, of
give me
course, because you have your
permission.
own show. So, what I'm going to do while you're getting that picture, I'm going to get you to
Right.
also um, be a host, and then you can change back the host. Okay. All right. So you are have the floor to share that
Okay.
visual, that hand signal, please.
All right. I will. It's just a little quick video, but what you'll have this in the show notes below. I can share the link with you. I can send
Do
you
you
the link
do you have a
if
picture of it, not a video?
oh
Yeah, the video won't ring through with the podcast, but do you have a just an image of the hand signal?
so even if I show you this now, you're not going to see it
It's
because
not going to ring through with ultimately with the podcast. But
okay.
I'll tell you what, can you do the hand signal?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to have you do the hand signal for us.
Okay. So it's hand up, thumb across, hand down.
Okay. And so someone would do that in three ways. So like three parts would be palm up, thumb across, and then all four fingers down.
Yep, close fist. So
Okay.
it's hand up, thumb across, close fist. And
Wow.
this signal was released. That's it. Perfect. If you see a child do that, now they won't do it up in front of their faces if they're with someone who's abusing them, and they won't do it. That it'll be much more surreptitious, probably hand down by the side and very small, but you'll see this
Absolutely.
happen.
Even by their lap or behind their back. It
100%.
could be upside down behind their back. So we all have to really be in tune to what these hand signals are. There was a time in my life where I thought, oh, yeah, okay. Some kids driving in a car, and are they really going to know the signals? Well, that's kind of a lame attitude. No, they might not know the signals, and other people might know the signals. But if it's global enough with enough exposure, it can save lives. Right? So,
It already has.
yeah,
We've already got a
fantastic.
story of it. So
What
I guess
resources do people have to learn all of these hand signals?
so it's just that one hand signal.
And is there a
And
resource where people can like download that and learn? Like,
yes, so if they go to my YouTube channel, Handing the Shame Back, it's up there. It's on our website, Handing the Shame Back. Everything's called Handing the Shame Back across social media,
so it's coming
and it's
to
all
so the
there.
okay, so the resource right now is on your YouTube channel because all of these all of these links will be on the show notes. I just
Yeah.
want to know if there was another resource that people can just Google and it would come up.
Yeah. Oh, if they just want to Google hand signal for kids, they'll see
It'll
it.
okay,
But
good.
I guess the thing is, we're just trying to spread the word as much as we can, Lily, with absolute heartfelt truth. I so wish I'd had that as a kid.
I know. I wish you had that too. I really do. And
Yeah,
if
it could have
there's,
saved me.
it could have
So
saved you.
there could have
It,
been one person that saw that and thought that kid's in trouble. So look, the hand signal is for children who are being abused and not safe. This hand signal was released across Facebook during lockdown, and it
okay.
was released by women who were being domestically abused. I know you can relate. And so in the last year, they started teaching it to children in Northern American schools, some North American schools. And so when I was creating a hand signal to release, someone reached out from Canada and said, hey, why don't you just keep using this one? Because it is known in Northern America to some children. So that's what that is.
Yeah, I
But
think
if it saves
simplicity
one
is
child,
best. So not many, but one. Just keep learning that one, right?
keep learning that one.
The,
Let's save the kids. There's, there's so many kids out there every day being abused and
yeah.
being trafficked and
Yes.
experiencing what they shouldn't. We know that the stats are over 93% of abusers are known to the child and family. So you've got to
Yes.
stop imagining it's not a stranger. It's not a
Exactly.
stranger. It's usually known either within the family or a friend of.
And
So
I was just literally on the news, on national news, saying that most children of abuse being trafficked live with their traffickers.
yeah.
It- it's it's unfathomable. it's it's crazy. Now, here's the issue that I'd like to discuss if we may, if we can. So we're in a very, very odd, strange, in my view, um, selfish time today. And there's so many movements that focus and eyes have been off of these prevalent acts of abuse like child trafficking, like domestic violence, like um, um, child sexual abuse, because of these other movements are seem to be taking over by leaps and bounds. The Me Too movement, the trans movement, this movement, that movement, that I've been actually in a space where I feel that we almost need to fight back. Not fight, that's the wrong word. We almost need to be a bigger voice for humanity, because human rights, we're starting to lose focus on that, and human rights has now become gender preference and this preference and that preference, and that's why I call it selfish movements. And while all these selfish movements are taking over by storm, we're all forgetting about this dehumanization that's going on, and all of the other minutia has just pulled the rug over all of it. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so, I suggest taking that hand signal by storm. Like what I do, I teach people how to identify the disguises behind abuse, right? And when I say disguises, I mean disguises. There's all these myths out there, right? Myth busting and whatnot, that really kind of weeds out, all of the other stuff. None of the other stuff matters. The only thing that matters is the actual behavior on from one human to another human. Sometimes I see there's bigger support on abuse of an animal that I've seen as opposed to abuse of a child, for goodness sake. And it really breaks my heart that we're not yet to that point where everyone understands the severity and prevalence and stronghold that inhumane acts have on humanity all over the world, in your country, in my country, in third world countries, in Canada, in South America, everywhere. And I believe that unless we start really simplifying and coming down to the fact that we're all connected and we're all human, for goodness sake, none of the other stuff matters. Doesn't matter your color, your culture, your creed, your gender. None of it matters. I don't even care what someone's preference is. It doesn't matter. What matters is how one human treats another human, and how when they're ill treated, how it affects them for the rest of their God-given life. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and look, I think there's several things to it. A question I often ask is, if not you, then who?
Exactly. So
What people say, of course we must protect the children, but share the hand signal then.
Yeah, but let someone else
Give
do
the
it.
kids something.
Yeah.
Or no, I can't possibly do that. I've got other things I need to focus on. My point is this: there's a lot of yap around children's rights and children must come first, and they're such a gift. I don't actually see a lot of action out of it.
Exactly. They talk the talk, they don't walk the walk.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
And the second thing is, you've got to start wondering why, generic you, Lily, audience, why there is this non-reaction to all of this horrendous child sexual abuse if we know that up to 1 in 3 are walking around the planet who have experienced this or are experiencing this. Why is there such, I call it the silent endemic, why is there such silence?
And why do you think?
Because it doesn't suit the narrative, and some of the abusers don't want it to be shut down.
Because more than half of that population are perpetrators.
That's right. They've got to come from somewhere.
The stats are the stats, and the stats are even higher than we show, because we know, and I know, and every person that is privy to abuse in any way, shape, or form knows that over 35% don't even tell. So the stats are even higher than what is shown.
Yeah. But the other thing, there's a third aspect to this, in my opinion, and that is that we are being groomed. Child sexual abuse has become such a feature. It's almost like, oh, this again. So it's minimized, we're desensitized, we're expected to just accept it, to the point where you can't, in some countries, you can't use the word pedophile. They're trying to get into law that it's minor attracted persons.
Oh, but this is what I'm saying. These are the movements that are making me crazy. just weeks ago, I heard a millennial saying she was talking about her product, and it was, like a tampon of some sort. And she was saying, this is very gender friendly for all menstruators. I was insulted. I'm like, really? Like, is this what we've come to today in 2023? Because I'm not a menstruator. I'm a woman, and I was born to hit puberty, have a period, menstruate, have a baby, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, or go through the trauma of not being able to have a baby. But the point is, I'm not a menstruator. I'm a woman. What's your take on that?
Yeah, no, I think it's gone too far. And I've got a friend who's a teacher, and she said to me, this is how far it's gone. 8-year-old boy she was teaching, and he was standing outside the toilet block. And she said, because he was just standing there, and she said, are you okay? And he said, I don't know which toilet I'm meant to use.
It's so sad.
Well, because the kids are getting so confused. There's just so much around this. And it's
Yeah, what
who's
happened to the boys'
who's
room, the girls' room? It doesn't even
I
exist.
mean, hey, don't get me wrong, identify however you wish, but I think for our children, it's just getting a bit much,
It's
and
getting a bit much, you think?
they're getting, we're confused. Imagine what the poor little ones are struggling with. He doesn't even know what toilet to use.
Exactly.
So I think it's just got a bit far, but
Yeah, which is a whole nother topic, perhaps for another day, but where, you know, if people think that this child abuse and child trafficking is just something that, a heterosexual is going to experience, wait until this gets even worse with
huge,
with
huge.
in the gay world, and it already is, but not to the extent of what you experienced. That's been like on the black market underground for decades. And if we can't even solve this, how are we going to solve this with new gender movements and whatnot, when we're already in dire need of overcoming this? So what are
Yes.
you doing to get the word out now? You're podcasting, obviously. You're on shows like mine, obviously. How can our audience and myself, how can we support you in getting this hand signal out in the world?
Thank you. And look, what I really appreciate is, honestly, I never need to tell my story ever. I'm fine. It's all good. I only use it because it brings attention to this.
I
And so
totally,
that's
I
what I've been.
totally agree 1,000%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't, yeah. But look, anybody with contacts in media, the more, I'm getting on a few radio shows now. TV would be great. People want to know what's behind this. I think it's really important. So any of those contacts, and for those of you that do get on the big screen or do have contacts, I'd be so grateful. Why? Because you don't know who you're saving, and we know we've already had one child saved through this hand signal already, and it got released on the 16th of June.
Oh, hallelujah. Of 2023. Oh,
Yeah.
that's so wonderful.
So it's already one child that we know of.
That you know
So
of. Okay.
kids are using it everywhere, and I'm so humbled that I came up with doing this, because Lily, I can't sit back. Not on my watch can I watch these stats rise.
No,
I have to do something, and this is what I'm doing.
you have
I've
to
also
lead in this.
actually,
You have to
I've
be the
got,
leader in this.
100%, and because I know this stuff, this is known to me. This is there's something deep in me. You see, I just want to help the beautiful children out there, and I'm actually writing a book at the moment called Keeping Kids Safe. a roadmap for parents, teachers, and others, because they don't know what's coming with this online sexual abuse, sextortion. All of this stuff is just getting bigger and bigger because the industry's growing. We can't even keep up with
Yeah,
it. Artificial intelligence is just going boom with everything. We're in trouble. And so parents need something. They need to know what to do, and they just don't know. So I'm excited about that, and I can't wait for that to be released. So
Oh,
yeah, let's just
wonderful.
save the kids, that
Yeah.
to me, too late for me, but for children, and children, even my hairdresser up the road, Lily, you'll love this. I was talking to her about the hand signal and that she's got kids, and she said, oh my God, Gloria, she said, I'm going to teach it to my daughter's friend who's 11. She, something's going on there.
Oh,
So I'm going to go home and show her.
wonderful. And I'm going to put out a manifestation that this really get taught in schools
Yes, thank you.
across the globe, starting from one country to the next, to the next, to the next. In a blink, they're teaching sex, and now there's sex education, and now there's um, gender rights or gender choice education. Well, we need to have safety education for child sex abuse victims.
100%.
Yeah. So
I agree with you. I really love your idea of the manifestation. Thank you.
yes, yeah, we're going to manifest that together. And I am on major media, and so the next time I'm on, I'm happy to show that hand signal, and we could reach tens of millions, hundreds of millions.
But please feel free to give them my details as well, because I think it would be really
all
powerful.
of your details. Okay, so
I mean, when you're on your major media thing.
Absolutely, I will do that. Okay, great, thank you. And all of Gloria Masters, her links will be on the show notes. If you have anything you'd like to say or ask or comment, I really encourage you as listeners and viewers to leave a comment, please, for Gloria, or a question for Gloria or myself or both of us. We will definitely respond back right here on the YouTube channel or on the podcast. Now, the podcast, the audio podcast, as you know, it's available all across the world, 11 different platforms, from Spotify to Apple TV to Apple Podcasts to Amazon Music, anywhere that you listen to your favorite podcast, whatever platform that is. Please find this episode and just reach out and ask any question or anything that you need, any advice for help, and we will get back to you. Gloria, is there any message that you would like to give to the audience today?
Thank you. Thanks, Lily. To the amazing survivors watching or listening, I just wanted you to know I see you, I stand beside you, and I believe you.
Oh, that's so beautiful. And what kind of message would you like to give to a spouse that's aware there's abuse going on, but they're afraid to speak out and help their child?
Take it somewhere. Be like the child that never stops trying. Take it to a friend. Take it to someone that you trust, that ride or die person in your life. Get some support around you. And I think if you can, remove the child, please, even if you have to make up a reason, an excuse. Send them somewhere for a week or so, because I think this needs to be sorted. How can this poor spouse live with themselves knowing this child is experiencing what they are?
Mhm.
And so I think,
Yeah.
if not you, then who?
Right. Again, if not you, then who? And one of the things that listeners and viewers that you need to know is that's one of the things that I teach globally is exit plans, safe and effective exit plans. If you think that the belief system out there in the world is that when you leave is when you're most in danger, I'm here to tell you the opposite. Your life is in danger right now while you are not leaving. The problem is you don't know how to leave with a safe and effective exit plan. So the solution is always to exit, but you need to do it safely and effectively. So so head on over also to show notes, my website, or reach out to us. I can definitely support every single listener on how to create an effective and safe exit plan for you and your child. Anything else, Gloria, that you'd like to add?
Oh, only if people are looking for the books, gloriamasters.com. And there's some links up there. Thank you, Lily. Thanks
Thank
for
you so much for being here. I love you and I am here to support you, and I believe you and I believe in your work. Thank you.
Thank you.